Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I've been asking the Minister a number of questions about the sanctions regime over recent months, and it's proved hard for him to answer a series of questions I've asked, such as how many people for whom English is a second language have been sanctioned, how many disabled people have been sanctioned, and so on. It is my view that he simply doesn't have the evidence to be able to state in the impact assessment on this bill that protected groups will not be disproportionately affected by the bill. They may or may not be, because my efforts to find out this information have failed, but I believe that they are, because when I see constituents who have been sanctioned, they are disproportionately people who are easily confused, they're disproportionately people who don't have good English, and so on. But actually, that's not the reason why I am going to be in the no lobby when it comes to this second reading. And the reason why I oppose this bill is because I do not believe that Parliament should give government an alibi for confiscating from 200,000 plus people sums of between £340 and £810 which they have illegally kept from them. And let's be clear, that is what we are being asked to do by this retrospective legislation. The government has broken the law. It has broken the law in a way which impacts individual citizens. It has disrespected the rights of individual citizens, and it is now asking Parliament to say, carry on doing it. And I do not believe that Parliament should do that. It is a fundamental issue of civil liberties, of human rights, and of good governance. And for that reason, I'm not going to abstain. I will be opposing this legislation, not because of the content. And when ministers say, oh, people knew, actually, let's be completely clear about what the regulations that they have been found in breach of say. Regulation 4 says that the notice, which people who are sanctioned receives, must specify that the claimant is required to participate in the scheme, the day on which participation will start, details of what the claimant is required to do by way of participation in the scheme, that the requirement to participate in the scheme will continue until the claimant is given notice by the Secretary of State that the claimant's participation is no longer required, or the claimant's award of job seekers allowance terminates, whichever is the earlier, and finally, information about the consequences of failing to participate in the scheme. Now, the Minister has, in my view, utterly disingenuously, I hope that's not unparliamentary, but I think so, suggested that claimant...
I think it is. And I think we're going to rule it is, and I'm sure you won't want to use that word.
I will withdraw that word. But the Minister has suggested that claimants knew the consequences. Well, I would simply like to refer him to the statements of the judges on this matter. It is quite clear, she looked through her pages, it is quite clear, if I can read what Judge Foskett said, the words in the letter received by Mr. Wilson were that his benefits may be stopped, perhaps conveying the impression that sanctions are not necessarily automatic. He goes on to say, the information given concerning sanctions is unclear and opaque. Now, I accept that since then the Minister has improved the letters, and I think that is right. But I don't oppose the possibility of sanctions. I believe that sanctions can work if people know that they are at risk of being sanctioned. I'll give way to the Minister.
Point out that actually sanctions aren't automatic. Sanctions may be applied because actually we disregard sanctions. Sanctions don't apply if there's good cause not to apply them. So may sounds right to me. The problem that the courts had was actually not specifying the graduated approach to sanctions.
As I said, the judge said the information given concerning sanctions is unclear and opaque. If you want sanctions to work, people need to know what the consequences of their actions are. And actually, this is a debate about the consequences of the actions. And the government's consequences of its actions in failing to make sure that it complied with Section 4 of the regulations in every communication with claimants, seems to me that the government should bear the consequences, and the consequences in this case is £130 million or up to that sum. And I think there is no question but that when someone does wrong, and let's be clear, the government has been found to do wrong in this case. It's not just an overlooked. It's a series of court judgments which say in respect of individual citizens they have been wrongly treated. Then the government must give them back their money. It's not the government's money, it is their money, because the government has wrongly kept it from them. And that is quite clear that it is what the courts have decided. And if the government is going to say, and I support it, that a sanction